Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupat Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Ashtottara Shata Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupat Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Ashtottara Shata Srimad His Divine Grace Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki His Confounder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Garantara Shriman Bhagavatam Ki Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to the assembled devotees. Oh, glories to Shishiguru and Shiguranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, the Summon Bonum, Chapter 57, the Murder of Satrajit and the Return of the Shamantaka, text number 41 and number 42. Shamata Kanda Sarjitva Yatibhyo Raja Atmana Bimrijyamanina Bhujas Tasmai Pratyarpayat Prabhu Shamanta Kanda Sarjitva Gyatibhyo Raja Atmanaha Bimrijamanina Bhujas Tasmai Pratyarpayat Prabhu Shamanta Kanda Sarjitva Gyatibhyo Raja Atmanaha Bimrijamanina Bhujas Tasmai Pratyarpayat Prabhu. Please chant. Shamanta Sarjitva Ratibhyo Raja Atmanaha Vimirja maninas puja tasmai pratyarpayat Prabhu Shamantakanda sarjitva Gyatibhyo raja atmanaha Vimirja maninas pujas tasmai pratyarpayat Prabhu Shamantakanda sarjitva Gyatibhyo raja atmanaha Vimirja maninas pujas Tasmai pratyarpaya Prabhu Shamantakam. The Shamantakaju, the Sarjitwa, after showing Gyatiyabhyaha to his relative Rajaha, the contamination Atmanaha falsely headed upon himself. Bimrija, wiping away Manina with the jewel. Bhuja, again, Tasmai, to him, Akrura, Pratyarpayat, offer it back, Prabhu, the Supreme Lord. Translation and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. After the Almighty Lord has shown the Shamantakaju to his relative, thus dispelling the false accusations against him, he returned to Akrura, purport. For the second time, doubts about the Lord's reputation occasioned by the Shamantaka Jew are dispelled by the Jew itself. Indeed, for the second time, the Lord brought the Jew to Dwarka to establish his integrity there. This amazing series of incidents demonstrate that even when Lord Krishna descends to this world, there is a tendency for his peers to criticize him. The whole material world is infected by the fault-finding propensity. And in this chapter, the Supreme Lord demonstrates the nature of this undesirable quality. Om Jnana Timrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Ummilitan Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Ramapada Swami Iti Namini. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirveshesha Shunyavadi Pashatyade Shatarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaevacha Patitanam Pavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha. And this is text number 42. Jastve Tadbhagavata Ishwarasya Vishnor Vairadyam Virijina Haram Sumangalam Cha Akyanam Patati Srinoti Anusmaretva Duskritinduri Tangapohya Jati Shatim. Translation. This narration, rich with descriptions of the prowess of Lord Sri Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, remove sinful reactions and bestow all auspiciousness. Anyone who recites, hears, or remembers it will drive away his own infamy and sins and attain peace. Thus end the purpose of the humble servants of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada of the 10th canto, 57th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam entitled Satyajit Murder, the Jew Return. Here's Rajiva Goswami's comment. He showed the jewel to the Yadavas and cleared the accusations. Created by the Jew, Krishna thought, quote, Akrura concealed the jewel by his will, not mine, because he has a little qualification, I will offer it to him. End of quote. He did this because he was the protector of his devotees. He did this for the benefit of the Yadu dynasty, or because he was the Lord. It was the proper action to teach the population. Akrura placed the jewel around his neck and went away. Harivansa says, quote, taking the gem from Krishna's hand, Akrura put it on his neck and shone like the sun. So, is like all pastimes of Krishna, there is a very clear purpose in Krishna creating all these wonderful activities. And he expresses that purpose as, there's four main purposes that he expressed in the Bhagavad Gita that define his coming to this world and what is his intent. One is to establish the principles of religion for mankind. And the other one, actually three. So when there is a decline in religion, he comes to reestablish the principles of religion. So is to set up the example, set up the standard of what religiosity is, and place religiosity, the principles of religion, establish them back again for the benefit of humankind. And then the other two is to give pleasure to the devotees and to annihilate the miscreants. So the Lord's actions are all geared for that, fulfilling that purpose. And in this case, we see that there is something quite telling about these particular pastimes of Krishna as, his Kshatriya-like pastimes, an administrator, a king, a leader of society. That the reality that anyone in a position of leadership, anyone in a position of responsibility, have to deal with how you manage public opinion, which is quite something. It's a reality that is there. It's part of the material world. That is a natural thing that will occur. And you have to be quite equipped to handle that in a way that guarantees the protection and the elevation and growth of those who are under your responsibility. So, the reality that there will always be a particular type of public opinion about things, that you're under that scrutiny, is there. Why? Why is that there? Why not having, especially when you have someone on the, even the Supreme Personality of Godhead as your leader. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is perfect and complete. And by knowledge and education, you understand that. Om Purnam Adapurnamidam. That the Lord is perfect and complete. Even when you rule by the perfect and complete personality of Godhead, that propensity still manifests. It's a reality of the material world, because in the material world, the part of the premise of being in the material world is that there's this strong propensity. The fact that you are present here, there's a strong propensity to be at the center of everything, that you are at the center of everything. That our consciousness is influenced by this false ego, this egocentric type of propensity. So when the living entity is is vulnerable, or is in an environment that is ruled by this selfish or centric type of consciousness, naturally these things can occur. It's about my interest. And when my interest is being compromised, then I'm going to voice, wait a minute, I have some rights here. My interests are being compromised. So, um, so therefore, that creates a particular opinion of the public. The opinion is that, we are fine, and the public will express its opinion as long as we are taking care, my needs are taken care, we're very happy and we're very approval. We approve. But if some of us are not happy, are feeling that my interest is being compromised, then I will start to raise some objections. And then when you raise objections, then there is something that happens when there is negative opinion on a particular criticism or a particular type of things like that they start to spread. And when it spreads, it starts to create, some instability in the whole environment. So, for an administrator, you pay attention to public opinion. Now, that is something that is very tricky. It requires very advanced intelligence and understanding of how to choose how to make ethical choices, not from the perspective of conditions and situations, but from the perspective of the context, of a much bigger context. And the context, so is contextual ethics. And the context have to do with what is the most beneficial thing for people in general. Because that is the responsibility of a Kshatriya. The Kshatriya is someone who gave protection, someone who guaranteed the protection and to provide the necessary things for those who are under the shelter of the king to be able to flourish spiritually and materially. So, what is the most beneficial thing? That is the underlying consideration. So sometimes in that process, you find that there may be some moral or ethical situations that um, they're both right, but which one will be the correct one? A good example is Arjuna in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He was faced with two ethical conflicting positions, and they both were right. So the one was, about um, having to be in the position of killing his own relatives and also in the position of killing those who are superiors. And in the other hand was, protecting the world or establishing religiosity or righteousness in the world. So there was this conflicting thing. So which one was the most appropriate? So um, Arjuna was guided by Krishna, and Krishna calls initially the instructions that he's given to Arjuna Buddhi Yoga. Buddhi. Buddhi means intelligence. He's giving the intelligence because the function of intelligence is to be able to discriminate, to have the proper discrimination. So that type of intelligence is required. That type of intelligence is required by someone in leadership. That you're able to, in a very difficult, sometimes very challenging situation, you're able to make the right choice, not for your personal selfish interest, but for the greatest interest to those who you're responsible for. So therefore, one of the traits of the Kshatriya is that the Kshatriya is ready to do anything, to sacrifice anything for the sake of his praja, or his citizens, or the people that are under their protection. Ready to sacrifice any personal interest. So in the case of Arjuna, he did when, and although it was a cause of great, great pain, and we see that after the battlefield of Kurukshetra, they were extremely aggrieved by the consequences of the battle in terms of how so many dear people, family members, superiors, have to die on their hands. Um, so it was very painful. It required that type of sacrifice. So, so the Arjuna was ready to do it, to take that sacrifice. That's a trait of a Kshatriya. The Kshatriya is capable of doing that. And for an administrator, someone in the position of leadership, that's a very important trait to actually principle, to understand that it's not about you, it's about the people that you're serving. And sometimes that requires sacrifice. And for doing that, also, so there's sacrifice and there's this intelligence. And the intelligence um, requires also to have intelligent people around you that are able to guide, like elevated people. So Kshatriyas will surround themselves by saintly brahmanas, very elevated personalities who will advise. Krishna played that part with Arjuna. He gave, that intelligent um, um, advice Buddhi yoga. And then Arjuna was able to succeed and make the right choice, the choice that was beneficial for the whole world. Without that intelligence, then very easily, even a position, even someone in the position, such positions of leadership can make the wrong choices. And a wrong choice, we'll see it here in the case of Satrajit, how a wrong choice lead to the whole spiral of consequences that created all kinds of, ultimately was the cause of their demise, of him and his immediate family, his brother, like that, um, and the consequences that it had in the disturbances, the causes that caused in the kingdom of the Yadavas, just by that wrong choice, a choice that was based on some personal interest. There's a story of King Akbar that sort of shows how important was the presence of a Brahmana who would advise a king. Um, can't remember what was the name of the advisor of King Akbar. It was a face. There's many stories between the interactions of these two. So once King Akbar was, touring his country, he would do that regularly. And in this occasion, as he is going in the road, he's seeing, and then as he looked, there is a washerman who is passing by. And as he's going, in his horse, and he sees that this washerman, all of a sudden, the horse trip and he's fall out of the horse. And then, he's bruised himself. So he puts himself together and then jumps in the horse. When he reached the palace and says he's going the steps, he slipped and then falls down and further bruised himself. And then, he's, what's happening today. So as he gets to his chambers, he extends his hand and then looked that there was a candle and he burns his hand. And now he's really concerned. What is all these things happening to me? Like everything is going wrong today. So then, what's different? What was different? What's causing all these inauspicious signs? And then he remembers. Okay, what was the difference today that some other times that never happens? Oh, I saw that washerman. So this washerman is really inauspicious. This washerman is the cause of all inauspiciousness. And by this washerman being around, he's going to ruin the day of everybody else. So what should we do? Well, just arrest the fellow and hang him. And then the advisor questioned the king. So, sir, um, so when you understanding what you said, that because today you saw this washerman, then you got all these bruises and you got burned. That's okay. Because you saw the washerman. Now, when you were going and seeing, did the washerman saw you? And then he say, yeah, he saw me. Well, when the washerman saw you, it's the cause of his death. So he's going to die because he saw you. And you just got some bruises because you saw him. So which one is more inauspicious? You know, him seeing you or you seeing him? So then King Akbar, got to, oh, that's true. Okay, release him like that. So how proper intelligence is there? So in the case of Krishna, he's showing how a perfectly qualified leader deals with criticism and deals with this public opinion that is critical. In one sense, is his transparency. You know, there are certain things, especially for a leader, that Krishna could just go and just eliminate all the critical elements. He had that power. Or he just ignored them. What is it tiny people, have to say about me? He's supreme. In either case, the perfect example of a king, he's showing that perfect example and he's creating all the circumstances to show how to handle, these type of situations and how to deliver proper justice, how to address the situation, and how to pay attention that in order for the leader to be able to do his job properly, then you have to address the doubts. You have to confront and address the doubts that people has. In other words, you encourage accountability. So part of the position that even in the position of king, and when we have the situation that modern monarchies, because of unqualified kings, has basically become um, um, finished. Not countries, they don't want people, societies, they don't want to have a king. They prefer democracy or they prefer some sort of different government systems. But in the past, especially during Vedic times, uh, the kings, they were not only powerful, they were not only um, you know, qualified, but they were also accountable to their people. It's just part of how they establish and they establish the government. The people were expected the king to be a certain way, and they were accountable for that. So Krishna showed he pays attention. He didn't need to do that, but he do pay attention to establish or to address any type of doubts on his administration. So he does that, and he does that in a quite transparent way. He does that by applying justice, by punishing Satadandva, and the type of punishment that very mild punishment in one sense that he gave to Akrura. Uh, so the bottom line principle is the principle: what is the you if you do or whatever choice you make should be there for the benefit of the people in general. There are so many cases of, one that is probably the most powerful one is the example of the kingdom of Lord Ramachandra. Uh, Lord Ramachandra's reign is considered the, the emblem of all government. So his kingdom, his rule is called the um, the Ram Raj. What is it? Raj Ram. No, I can't remember the word that is used, but you know, it's the ideal of governance. And Lord Ramachandra himself is described as the Maryada Purushottam, that is the supreme, the ideal for human beings, for the human to act. So he sets the perfect example. And when you look in the context of his perfect example, it's all about his capacity and his willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. Everything he does is like that. That's when you look at the context. And Vedic kings are like that. They're ready to sacrifice anything that is personal for the greater good. We see that principle of sacrifice in King Rantidev when he is, even after fasting for so many days, I think it was 100 days or something like that, he gave away all his food to people who were coming. And we have the case of King Shibi, who was willing to cut his own flesh to feed to this hawk because he took the protection, under his protection, a pilgrim that came to his shelter. So the hawk said, this is not just, I'm also your citizen and this is my food and you're taking away my food. But the king, having that principle, it was correct. The hawk was correct. But the pilgrim took shelter. And because of that, for the sake of the pilgrim, he said, I will give you my own flesh that will amount the amount of flesh that we're getting for this pilgrim. So he was ready, he was doing that. He was ready to do that. So that's sacrifice. So, but Lord Ramachandra, even being such a perfect personality, a perfect king, he was not only criticized at that time, but even today, modern scholars and materialistic moralists and all these type of people, they heavily criticize Lord Ramachandra from coming from the choice that he did to banish Sita when she was pregnant. Because the whole thing, how it developed, was externally appears like a massive injustice because there was no doubt of Sita's purity. Lord Ramachandra accepted. Lord Ramachandra, you know, so that was always there established. And just because some ignorant persons among, some ignorant groups are starting to have all this criticism and doubts and spread this critical views, around of Mother Sita and Lord Ramachandra, then Lord Ramachandra goes and punishes Sita by banishing her, pregnant. So modern materialistic moralistic persons, so-called moralistic persons, they go crazy about this. How you can call this personality, how you can worship someone. I mean, in the common world, if you have a husband that abandons his pregnant wife and throw it in the street, he will be condemned as, a terrible person. So how can you worship such a personality as God? So that's when you see the content of something, but you don't see the context. And the full context is just Lord Ramachandra exhibiting this principle of sacrifice and this principle of detachment for the benefit of the world. That is such an important thing for a ruler. Lord Ramachandra couldn't go and punish all those rascals who were talking about Sita. It's an offensive. But if he will do that, what consequences will be? Because when you have these doubts, they create, it doesn't matter. They always create instability. And then, so if he acts like that, oh, someone may say then, oh, he was selfish, or there was something. When there is smoke, there's fire. So, um, or if he ignores it, then the whole thing will continue spread. So you have to make a choice. You have to face it. And the way Lord Ramachandra was choose to do was, even if it was at the cost of the thing that will cause us the most pain, he will do it because it was the most beneficial thing for the people in general. So that's how he handled this type of criticism that will even in the kingdom of Lord Ramachandra appear. Now, how that will be what is the benefit, of that choice? Well, for once is or how, when you see the context of Lord Ramachandra, that for once he didn't abandon Sita, Mother Sita. He placed Sita within his kingdom in the care of Valmiki Muni, in the ashram of Valmiki Muni. It was within his kingdom, so he will be able to protect her in case some harm will be coming. Because he will be there, if someone attacks Valmiki Muni, Valmiki Muni's ashram, he will be there to protect. Valmiki Muni was giving proper protection, and so she was not abandoned. She was they were just separated for creating a stable management of society. Now, in terms of society, how they will benefit is that although they were vulnerable to this offensive, thinking, then the arrangement itself, how Lord Ramachandra dealt with it, is that brought them to elevate or to be able to overcome their weakness. And through the pastime, at the end, when Lava and Kusha, the sons of Lord Ramachandra, came to deliver the narrations of the Ramayan to the people, that the whole thing led to that, to the appearance of the Ramayan and to the narrations of the Ramayan. So the first narration of the Ramayana was to the kingdom of Ayodhya in the presence of Lord Ramachandra, and that in itself elevated all the inhabitants of Ayodhya to the point that they all went to Vaikuntha with Lord Ramachandra. So the ultimate goal was to protect, the ultimate goal was to elevate consciousness, and whatever you have to do to fulfill that, even if it's at the cost of your own personal um, interests, the righteous leader, the perfect leader will do. Selfless. So, so these are the traits, that is showing, how to expertly deal with these things, how to uh, responsibly be able to address them, how to create the important, how to pay attention and to have a to have a pulse of what people feels and how and their opinions in one sense, their concerns, and deal with them in such a way that they benefit, and the choices will be like that. And of course, you have to be highly prepared and highly equipped, and you have to have the proper, um, the right people around you to help, manage these things. So it's quite an example, and very uh, educative. Yeah. Any comments or questions? Yes, bro.
Thank you for your class, Prabhuji. Um, it's probably way too much for me to make a comment on. Way too. But I would like to hear from you what you think about the situation, which is a little bit different. Um, so I have my thoughts about it, but um, when Lord Shiva was giving the Bhagavatam class and he had his wife sitting on his lap, and he was criticized, and then his wife cursed the person. I forget his name, but he was maybe, yeah, that was a different situation where Lord Shiva himself didn't get involved, but his wife actually cursed that person for criticizing. So that was a little bit different than like with Lord Ramachandra. Do you see any difference there? Like anything?
Yeah. Well, for once, uh, Chitraketu was not criticizing. King Chitraketu was not criticizing Lord Shiva, but it was more like, a light, or much in a lighter mood, just expressing his admiration for Lord Shiva. It was more like, when you make a comment, oh, you know, just look at this, it's more like in amusement of how great this person is. Lord Shiva can understand the heart of Chitraketu, but Parvati didn't take it lightly, so she cursed. So, I mean, um, and what was the other example then? Oh, there's example of Kim Parikshit, so that offended, put the snake on, so, and he got cursed by Shringi, the son. So these situations happens, that the person who is receiving, or who did the offense, accept, because Chitraketu accepted his offense. Parikshit acceptance the result of his offense. King Parikshit. Uh, the personalities who were supposedly offended, they understood. This is it's a difference, as you say, it's a difference, but they understood that the intent was not to offend. You know, in the case of Shaunika Rishi, he understood this is very out of character. So this is a great saintly king. It's very out of character. There have to be something at hand here. So he could understand that. And in the case of Lord Shiva, he could understand also these things. But it's part of the presence of the Lord. Um, yeah, in the case of how to deal ourselves with criticism, of sometimes unjust criticism, or being at the end, at the receiving end of some thoughtless dealings, or maybe being offended or something like that, is we have to um, um, exercise a moral goodness. Moral goodness, which means that you don't react. You control the mind wants to react. The ego wants to react, but the moral goodness is you don't allow the reactions. You don't. It's not that you turn a blind eye to it. You will deal with that. Like Krishna, all these examples is a perfect example how you deal with these things, not from the perspective of the mind. The mind is, I'm pulled this way, I'm pulled this way. I'm angry. I'm, uh, don't pay attention, pay attention. That type of thing. So is this, you know, the intelligence is what's the most beneficial thing for all involved. What is good for me and good for this person and good for everybody else. That's the moral goodness. You act with intelligence, and the other one is you're in the mental platform. You know, just being pushed here and there by whatever things. This is stronger. So, any other comment? Chintia.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Um, so, how do I know? Because you spoke about choices. So, how do I know in my everyday life if I'm making a right choice? So, if it doesn't affect the others, if because you said the right choice is the one which is benefit others, but if it doesn't have to do with other people but with rather myself, so how do I know that I'm making the right choice and it's good for me? Yeah.
Yeah. There's some things that I think we can. There's some that are there's certain type of choices that are very clear. That when you have something that is obviously wrong and something what is obviously right. Suppose you have you're in a position of oh, here's an example, more graphic, that is part of my life. My mother, she had this position of leadership in one university in Venezuela, and um, she was a very one of the things she had is that she was a extremely principled type of person. I mean, to the fault. I mean, at the end, she was a little, too strict on these things. Um, but she was very principle oriented, and the atmosphere of the governance at that time was very corrupt. There was a lot of money in the country, and therefore there was a lot of corruption too on different levels of public life. And the university was a public university, and some many of the people around were corrupt, were taking bribes, were taking money, were doing that type of thing. And because she was in a position of leadership, basically is here is you have to just turn a blind eye and then get a little piece of the corruption, or get some part of the corruption, and then you don't participate, just don't like that. And she didn't accept, and the result of that is that she was chased out of the whole institution. And anyway, it created a whole series of things to her. um, just from the perspective of it was a clear choice. You really do something, someone is doing, trying to get you to do something wrong, or you do the right thing based on your principles. So that's simple. Then you can, it's clear. You make a choice. But then there's other type of choices that are very confusing, and then you do feel it, because how do you know? There's certain perplexity. I don't know, just like Arjuna thing, like I say, there's some type of choices that are both, they have, they can be right, but which one is in the long term more beneficial for you? And in other hands, let's start with you. So what do you do in that? Then the Bhagavad Gita tells us that's why we need spiritual guidance. Why spiritual guidance? Because the spiritual guidance will give us, this type of intelligence. Intelligence that is, that at the end, you have the intelligence to make the choices that will guarantee your continuing elevation to Krishna consciousness, self-realization. So you're guided by vidya, by transcendental knowledge, and then you're making your choices according to that. So for that, we need that type of help. We need the spiritual master, which is sort of broadcasting Krishna's instruction from within the heart, who really knows exactly what's going on. And that's how we know. So there are certain things that we can do on our own, and we prepare ourselves for that, to always make choices that doesn't compromise our um, our principles, the principles that we embrace. And when we make the choice that compromise those, we sort of get the, we sort of know, oh, I'm doing this because of weakness of heart. But even with that, to have that capacity, you still need, transcendental knowledge. You still need that type of intelligence that tells you what is right and what is wrong. And if we choose wrong because of a weakness of heart, we know that we're doing something out of that. So then we have a chance. Then, we, by that acknowledgement of weakness, then we have a chance, to continue growing. So the presence of this transcendental knowledge in our life is essential. And that's the part that we have to have. And that's the part that personalities, even kings, they have. That's what I'm saying. You have a body of brahmanas giving you guidance, and saints like that, to make the proper choices and giving you the tools to make those choices. Anything else, ladies? Krishnarji.
It seems a very fine balance, definitely, as you were pointing out, for a person in leadership to be attentive to public opinion, but at the same time to act in a way that keeps the public happy, even if the public is being critical and not actually fully informed, perhaps of the inner workings of some issue. So that fine balance obviously is assisted greatly by the presence of the brahmanas, with, in the case of a monarchy where the brahmanas are advising, as you were saying. And it seems still sometimes the sacrifice that's made on the part of somebody in leadership to pacify, in some sense, the public is at quite high personal cost. So it's quite interesting. And just on this topic, in perhaps like half a century ago, I found it very fascinating. A particular person in the lineage in the British monarchy who came to power and wanting to marry a divorced woman, and that was against the social norms of the time. So he was receiving advice not to proceed, and he chose to abdicate his monarchical position in order to perform that action. So, one can see that obviously the life can't possibly be successful if he's even going against the advice received by the clergy in that setup. So, I was just thinking of that sort of.
Quite something, because that example led to a less qualified person coming to power. So the brother was much less qualified than him, which, at the end, caused, at the end, it was not the right thing to do for the benefit of all. So when you are in the position of power and you choose things according to what is beneficial for you, so even if you take public opinion, because that's what modern politicians do, they adjust to public opinion to please public opinion. So they use public opinion to entrench themselves more into power. So it's about themselves. So if I going to agree with public opinion and try to please public opinion, is for me to better be better situated in power, not for their benefit, but for my benefit. And that's when you use public opinion in the wrong way and you create something that is not good for anyone. But the righteous leader will go with public opinion if it's beneficial for them, and go against public opinion if it's beneficial for them. And we confronting that, and at the end it will be something that is that they can see. They can see the benefits. They can see the full benefit of that at the end. Everybody. Say Abraham Lincoln, when he decided to abolish um, slave, and that caused a civil war. So in the immediate reaction of that, there was such a pushback. I mean, it was a very bold thing because it causes even his life too. That was a sacrifice, um, but it was the right thing to do, the principal thing to do. It was, if he promised to uphold the constitution of this country, and the very beginning of the constitution says that all men are, are equal, and then we hear here a country that is, that is full of inequalities, then you have to do something. You have to establish something like that. So, it's not, obviously there's more flaws and this, but that principle in itself, even if you have to do something that is against many of the opinion of the public, you do, if it's for their benefit. And you have to establish it. You have to almost like, educate like that. Anything else? Taisha, you have something? Okay. Grantarashman Bhagavatam Ki Jai.